Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. The Ministry of Health is assuring St. Lucians that there is a plan in place to safeguard their health amidst growing concerns about ashfall from the La Soufre volcano. Health officials say whilst the government extends help to St. Vincent during their time of disaster, the people of St. Lucia have not been forgotten in the event that the tides turn for the nation. Genevieve Gonzague reports.
The Ministry of Health continues to encourage members of the public to take heed of the advisories on how to handle the ash that is coming from the La Soufre volcano in St. Vincent. As concerns continue to increase following the levels of ash being seen across the island, health officials have assured that in the event that the phenomenon worsen, there is a plan to safeguard St. Lucians. Medical Officer Dr. Glensbot Joseph explained that the Ministry of Health and the National Emergency Management Authority have airtight measures in place.
The health facilities, first of all, we do have what is called a volcanic management plan that is in St. Lucia. And within that plan, of course, it caters to the management of ashfall. And as such, if there is need, that plan would be operationalized, and as such, the various agencies would respond appropriately. So if there is need for evacuation, they would first of all establish shelters in which vulnerable persons can be taken to be safe.
While it is expected that the south of the island will most likely experience the brunt of the ashfall due to its proximity to St. Vincent, Dr. Joseph explained that the entire island needs to ensure they adhere to the advisories because, as seen in the last few days, the entire island can be affected by the ash.
It is important for each one of us to be aware of these precautionary measures in terms of, if I may repeat some of them, reducing your exposure, one, by staying indoors as much as you can, especially for those vulnerable people, the children and the elderly, along with persons who have chronic respiratory and heart conditions, to ensure that you close the doors and windows to limit the entry of the ash into the building, in addition to the use of masks, goggles, and other mechanisms to reduce exposure to the ash. So it's going to be a multifaceted, a multi-sectoral response.
He says members of the public should not at all be concerned that help is being extended to the neighboring island without measures in place to care for St. Lucians. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Genevieve Gonzague.
Tourism Minister Dominic Fedee has called on the opposition to stop playing political football with investors. During the budget debate this week, opposition parliamentarians singled out the UWP administration for not delivering on hotel developments throughout their tenure in office. Fedee says it is irresponsible of the opposition to bastardize the same investors with whom they initiated some of these projects, only meeting stumbling blocks when the UWP administration took over.
The ruling UWP administration has been singled out for not producing any of the hotel projects which it promised during its tenure. Castries South MP Dr. Ernest Hilles spelled out a number of hotel properties which the government announced and have not delivered on. Hilles said that it was political fraud to promise hotels even during COVID-19.
In 2020, when COVID has already started affecting countries, when they themselves were saying how devastating COVID would be, on June 23rd, the Prime Minister says, some of these tourism developments are expected to begin construction sometime later this year. COVID had already started. There was a shutdown then. Remember, we got shut down in March. And he's speaking on June 23rd. Mr. Speaker, I admit that some of these projects have previously been announced in this honorable House and have not gotten underway. This has been due mainly to systemic tardiness or other factors.
Instead, Tourism Minister Dominic Fedee chose to focus on the hotel developments which were promised but had begun dialogue under the SLP. Range Developments was at the top of the list.
In May 21, I want to deal with the Range project first. In May 21, 2016, a contract was signed between the St. Lucia Labour Party administration. And if you note the date, May 31, 2016, a development agreement to develop a hotel under the CIP project in Black Bay View Fort. Now, Mr. Speaker, you would note that this is 6 days before the last general elections, and the lands, Mr. Speaker, were offered below market value. It was somewhere in the region of $2 US a square foot, Mr. Speaker, that the lands were offered at. And so, Mr. Speaker, what I find interesting is the clause in the agreement, Mr. Speaker, which allowed the developer to, Mr. Speaker, have and apply for as much as 40% of the workforce in that agreement, they were saying could have been foreign nationals. Now, Mr. Speaker, 40%? Why would a government sign away the opportunity for locals to get employed? Mr. Speaker, this deal was a deal we couldn't go forward with. This deal was a deal, Mr. Speaker, that we had to reconstruct and we had to say no to.
He also made mention of the Fairmont Hotel.
That wasn't announced by this administration. It was announced in 2016, just prior to the last general elections, by the previous administration. This development, Mr. Speaker, started with them. And so, Mr. Speaker, if now there are some challenges, and I'm not in the business of bastardizing or muddying the name of any investor, we should never do that. But, Mr. Speaker, every government will learn that investors are going to have challenges from time to time, and the challenges are going to be real. And with COVID-19, Mr. Speaker, a lot of businesses have lost a lot of time. And so the level of progress that you would have seen on a number of developments, Mr. Speaker, would have been compounded and exacerbated by the challenges brought on by the pandemic. And so, Mr. Speaker, if the developer is having challenges, then I think that both administrations would have had to face and confront those challenges and do their best to try to see how they can improve the situation in those circumstances.
During the 2021-2022 budget address, the Prime Minister chose to focus on village tourism and the specific initiatives that will be undertaken in Grosley, Soufrière, and Ancillary. For the Hot 7 News, Nisha Charles reporting.
The St. Lucia Labour Party has given the Prime Minister a failing grade for his presentation of the 2021-2022 budget address. According to the MP for Dennery North, the presentation lacked creativity and did not stir confidence from the masses.
Under the theme Adapting, Overcoming and Persevering, We Are a Resilient Nation, Prime Minister Alan Chastanet detailed his plans for the financial year 2021-2022 and how he would accelerate plans for growth of the island's economy. But according to the Dennery North MP Sean Edward, the 4-hour-long address did not have its intended purpose. During his contribution in Parliament on Wednesday, Edward likened the PM's address to that of an underwhelming cricket match.
The display by the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, to use a cricket analogy, was a very unattractive innings, one that reminded me of the playing days of the member for Ancillary, where he had great difficulty getting the ball off the square. And at times, Mr. Speaker, not only did he struggle to time the ball and to get it off the square, at the end of every single over, he needed a water break. As if to suggest, Mr. Speaker, that what he was doing or what he was engaged in was so arduous and was so difficult. The presentation by the Prime Minister last night, Mr. Speaker, was flat. It lacked creativity. It failed to inspire the masses. And worse, Mr. Speaker, not a single sector in the St. Lucian society was able to draw or derive any confidence or inspiration from the utterances of the Prime Minister.
For the Dennery North MP, the presentation was simply regurgitation from previous pronouncements.
He said he was going to create a modern healthcare system. We'd heard that before. He said that as a country we would be less dependent on fossil fuels. We heard that before. He said he was going to boost agriculture. And Mr. Speaker, he said that there would be the construction of hotels. But this time he was more careful. he did not promise the quantum that he would have promised previously. Mr. Speaker, after hearing the Prime Minister last night, should the banana farmers of this country be inspired? Did the utterances of the Prime Minister last night engender any kind of confidence in bus drivers, the nurses at the OKEU, the fisher folk, single mothers? Whom did he inspire with that budget address?
Edward insisted that the current UWP administration is merely scrambling to complete projects on the eve of a general election.
Where is the new St. Jude? Where are the bananas to France? Where are all the new hotels that we've been promised over a 5-year period? And where is the ching-ching in the pockets of St. Lucians, Mr. Speaker? Where is the new St. Lucia we were promised? Businesses are closing, and I know the easy retort is COVID. Crime is spiraling out of control. It will be difficult to attribute that to COVID. Mr. Speaker, the expectations of the average St. Lucian has been violated by this government.
Some $1.639 billion has been estimated for expenditure for the fiscal year 2021-2022. For the Hot 7 News, Nisha Charles reporting.
The St. Lucia National Students' Council has signaled its support for the physical reopening of schools come the 19th of April. Public Relations Officer of the Council, Jean-Luc Constantine, says the pandemic has impeded the learning of many students, and it is understandable that the education sector should get back to some sense of normalcy.
We recognize that our students' education has suffered for the means of protecting their health, and we understand that that suffering is even greater for our younger students and our differently able students. The St. Lucia National Students' Council understands that the reopening of schools during the COVID-19 pandemic is vital to the learning process. However, students, we must remain cognizant that it should not, by any means, outweigh our safety, both mental and physical. The SLNSC encourages students to follow the guidance of their school's administration in the successful execution of protocols at our schools across the island.
He says once students are back in schools, they need to remember to take responsibility for their health.
Let us remember to social distance, wear our mask, constantly sanitize our hands, and follow our schools and our country's protocols. We understand that as schools reopen, we will all attempt to jumpstart our education, and that there is no one-size-fits-all method that will work for us all. But it will be critical for us as students to take responsibility and work alongside our teachers, our peers, and our parents to ensure that we have a smooth transition to face-to-face learning. Students of St. Lucia, now more than ever, your voices matter.
Constantine says as final year students approach the last leg of their academic journey, the National Students' Council is encouraging them to power through despite the many struggles that they have had to endure. A partnership between the Royalton and Marriott hotels will see the construction of a 250-room property. Tourism Minister Dominic Fede made the announcement in Parliament on Thursday. While the details were not clear, the minister did say that the facility would be located along the Redwee Beach.
You would have recalled, Mr. Speaker, that the Prime Minister would have announced in his previous budget statement that there is going to be a 250-room hotel. Mr. Speaker, while we were doing this and negotiating with the investor, there is a merger that has taken place between the Royalton Company and the Marriott. And so, Mr. Speaker, that joint venture partnership has now created a new set of rules and a new situation for the development to take place. And so, Mr. Speaker, we are going to make tonight as a document of the House a letter that we've received from the Marriott brand, Mr. Speaker, as they continue to express their strong interest in developing the hotel at the Pigeon Island, the Redwee Beach.
Minister Fede said that it would be one of the brands managed by the Marriott portfolio of properties.
Once developed, it should create somewhere in the region of 500 full-time jobs. And during the construction phase, Mr. Speaker, there should be somewhere in the region of about 400 jobs at peak construction periods. So, Mr. Speaker, we are looking forward very much to the development of this new hotel on the Railway Beach.
That was Tourism Minister Dominic Fady. This is the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. There's more after the break.